teachers of Reddit. How does it feel when a student accidentally calls you mom or dad? My cousin is a elementary teacher and told me she immediately thinks, oh no, the other kids will mock him, so pity I guess. I've never had a student call me dad by mistake, sometimes in that mocking, okay dad, but students used to call me mom quite often. Context: I'm large bearded man. I always thought it was kind of cute / sweet, like the associations with mom tend to be quite caring / nurturing. So if that's how my students feel about me, sounds like I'm winning I guess. You can tell by the number of question marks there that I'm very sure of myself. I teach first grade and it happens all the time. They might be asking me a question or something and go, hey mom I mean, and get a little flustered. I found the best way to keep them from feeling too embarrassed is to play along with a yes, honey, or what do you need my son / daughter? We get a little laugh and then move on. Last year, all my kiddos really got into it and called me their school mom. And they called each other their school sisters / brothers. It was really super sweet. I think it's super cute, and it's not just the kids. I was interning at a high school and a 17-year-old boy went Maya. I can't figure this one out. I was just there was some scattered laughter, but it wasn't malicious. Just a good teaching period actually. I remember calling my form tutor mum on like 3 weeks before the end of 6th form. She had been my form tutor since the beginning of high school and just went, you almost made it 7 years without doing that. Still makes me laugh / cringe 7 years later. I called my teacher dad in grade 5, 11 years old, and he went off his rocker. Savaged me. I was belittled in front of my class. Fuck you Mr. Pitts, fuck you. Yesterday I had a kid say hey, mom. Like she was going to ask me a question. And some kids started snickering. I was like to her, and all know I am like your school mom. So, to the rest. All the kids laughed together and said yeah right. Most of my students are with me more than their parents. It is normal to slip up. And I always try to make sure the kids don't feel embarrassed about it. It feels really endearing. Honestly. My sister has been a teacher for about 4 years, and it happened to her for the first time a couple months ago. She was so excited and amused by it. She called me after class. It finally happened to her. She pretended like it never happened after he said it though, and she thinks the kids missed it. I was in 12th grade. My teacher was also my mother. She wasn't answering me as I called Mrs. Teacher name. So I said, Mom. I was close to both getting detention and getting grounded. I get called mom all the time by my students. They always get flustered and embarrassed, but I answer with yes my child, and that lightens the mood. It's a great reminder of how young and innocent my class are. Not a teacher, but I nannied for multiple families across 4 years. Occasionally they'd call me mom and I'd correct them. But when they said it in front of their actual parents I felt really embarrassed for some reason. One kid in particular was just visiting the country. Her parents were on a summer business trip and heard through the grapevine I was the one to call if they needed a nanny while they were here. The girl was starved for attention, but her parents were too busy with their own thing. And the only attention she got was when she acted up and got yelled at. So I am this kid's nanny. And she was bored out of her mind, so I spent the next couple of weeks taking her to every kid-friendly place and event I can think of. We were at a museum and suddenly she says, oh yeah mommy, look at this. I chuckle and say something like, not mommy, I am name. She just sighs and stays. Can you just pretend that you're my mom? Please? That broke my heart. This was at least 4 years ago, and I still think about that. Well, it's better than being called grandpa. My mother was a teacher for some of my classes. Private Catholic K8. While I never called her mom in class, a few others did. I always looked over at them suspiciously like, where were you when it was time to clean? It happens to me all the time, because I'm a preschool teacher. Sometimes they say teacher mom or something like that. Once I had twin students with 2 moms ask me, do you want to be our third mom? There's even room for you in the back seat. It's super sweet and warms my heart of course. For the little ones like that, teachers are their second moms. It's hard for them to separate the caregiving role, but sometimes I explain to them that I'm not mom, but a very special teacher / person in their life. Moms do very special things, and dad / other adults at home too, that teachers don't do. And I think it's really important to maintain those boundaries and that understanding. My kindergartner called his mom by his teacher's name. Mom wasn't thrilled about that. I called my first grade teacher, a normally sullen and stern looking man from Germany, daddy, and watched as it literally melted his soul. He was actually a very nice guy and my parents adored him. He wrote a very sweet note in a book I bought from a book festival at the end of the year for me, because I loved reading and was ahead for my age. You're the best, Mr. W. Still remember you. Homeschool parents get it all the time. I would like to know what my first grade male teacher thought when I accidentally called him grandma. I get worried that they found out the truth. They're just used to calling out for help from mom and dad when they need help. So I understand that it's not intentionally done, although it is kind of endearing. Male teacher. 2nd grade. Not uncommonly I've been called dad, mom, and occasionally grandma. Actually not that big of deal, as we become a child's caregiver for the majority, if they're day for the majority of the year. The worst that happens is the child is temporarily embarrassed. At that age none of their peers notice or care. It doesn't bother me either. Makes the sex a bit kinky, but I don't mind. Have you ever seen the Vine, where the little boy runs up to his big sister and calls her "Oh Redado" and his sister says "Adorido, I look like your dad!" Exclamation mark. It feels a lot like that. Not a teacher, but I recall the one time one of my classmates called our teacher Mom. We were 9 at the time. Poor kid cried on the spot when he realized his mistake and the teacher cracked the biggest smile we had ever seen in response to the mistake. She has never smiled that hard ever since. It makes me smile. We all did it at least once. Kids usually catch themselves and get embarrassed. Hey dad. I usually just smile and drop a quick "no worries, kiddo, what's up?" I'd think it depends on the relationship the kid has with their parent. Kid from a shitty home, it doesn't feel good if they call you dad. Otherwise I bet it feels nice. Long as you like kids. Which is not guaranteed of teachers. Conversely, I worked at my daughter's daycare center. They called me Miss Kelly and one day had to pick up the kindergarteners in the school van. When my daughter came out and saw me, she smiled real big and said, "Hi Miss Mommy." 20 years later I'm still laughing over this one. Not a teacher, but I had a teacher who actually encouraged it, and by the end of the year everyone in the class had a title, like we had great uncles, daughters, etc. All from this tiny teacher. She also fed us when we didn't get the chance to eat lunch, and if you were an athlete she'd go to your games. She was a pretty great teacher, more of a mom than half of our moms were. I called my boss dad one time in front of the whole company and everybody sighed and smiled, and he was super proud. I love you Dave. Great boss. This is the best post I've ever seen on this subreddit. You probably should have put serious as a tag. I called my kindergarten teacher mom one time, and she said something like "I don't worry. I have been called everything by students. Mom, dad, Santa. Extremely sad. I mostly work with kids who just don't get enough attention or their parents are just alcoholics. I was sitting in the village center once reading a book and a toddler walks up to me and sits down next to me and starts calling me papa. His mom and sisters kept pulling him away and he kept walking back. Sad times in Eastern Europe. My mother was my English teacher in 10th grade, so yeah. I call my boss at work dad all the time. But to be fair, that's mostly a sexual thing. I once called a teacher mum and she hugged me so, but luckily I was already unpopular so no one cared. My friend did this once and I was laughing about it to him. The teacher overheard and said it was sweet that he thinks of her as a parental figure. The good thing was, this teacher was really nice and thoughtful that everyone liked her. I accidentally called my high school teacher Doyo. His name sounded kinda similar, and it was an honest slip of the tongue. He called me Redutero for the rest of the day. Inconsequential. I teach high school, and it happens frequently enough in all grades. Just a slip of the tongue. Also, having worked for a number of years in a very tough, low SE school ITA, definitely not the worst thing I've been called. Not a teacher, but back when I was 9 I accidentally called my teacher mum on more than one occasion. Numerous times I came close to saying it but quickly backpedaled. The first time I actually did say it thankfully wasn't in front of other students, but she raised her arms victoriously and shouted finally. She wasn't a mother herself, if I recall correctly, but enjoyed helping and supporting me. What didn't help matters was I seemed to be her favorite student, and she was my favorite teacher, so I slipped up more times than I care to admit, and it even became a game between my actual mum and her on how many times I would say it. I am a camp counselor during the summer, and usually working with kids age 47, and the younger ones definitely do it more. Like I got called a fair amount. Honestly, I thought it was mostly cute and obviously harmless, so it never made me feel weird. I think it is also assuring that there is some level of comfort between you and the kid, I think. Not a teacher, but the last time I did this was when I was 15. I just laugh with them. No biggie. I often mix up them and it, because I don't know each child. Just a brain thing from juggling too many things at once, I think. The wrong words just come out. Then when they laugh at me, I say, well, you call me mum sometimes. We have a lot of banter in my classroom. Funny. It felt sweet that they put you in the same category as dad or grandpa. I've been called both, and I just laugh. I've never seen any bullying because of it. I teach high school, so it doesn't happen for me. But I have had a few students tell me I'm the closet thing they have to a father in their life. It's heartbreaking, but I'm glad I can at least be there for them. I have students openly and affectionately call me mom and auntie. I just roll with it. I teach high school. They even have mock fights over whose mom I am.